There is something almost deceptive about 30 push-ups a day. On the surface, it sounds like the kind of advice you might brush past. Too simple, too small, too ordinary to matter. And yet, researchers who study human longevity and physical resilience keep circling back to this one movement again and again, because what it quietly does inside your body is anything but ordinary. It requires no membership, no machine, no commute to a facility. You can do it in your bedroom before the rest of the house wakes up. It takes roughly 2 minutes. And the changes it sets in motion reach all the way down into your blood vessels, your brain chemistry, your bones, and the very cells that determine whether you age with strength or without it. That is not a small thing disguised as a small thing. That is something genuinely powerful hiding in plain sight. To understand why this matters so much, it helps to step back and think about the kind of life the human body was originally shaped to live. For the vast majority of human history, physical effort was not optional. It was woven into every hour of every day. People hauled water and carried loads and pushed heavy things and pulled themselves up and over obstacles simply to get through ordinary life. The muscles were never given a long stretch of time to simply sit idle, because idleness meant you did not eat, did not shelter yourself, did not survive. The body was built around that expectation of constant, varied, repeated physical demand. And then, across just a few recent generations, nearly all of that demand disappeared. We now sit to work, sit to travel, sit to rest, sit to be entertained. An entire day can pass without a single muscle group being asked to do anything meaningful at all. But the biology has not caught up. The body still expects that load. It still runs on the assumption that demand is coming, and when it does not arrive, systems begin to quietly deteriorate. 30 push-ups a day is a way of honoring that expectation. It is not a workaround or a shortcut. It is giving the body back a small piece of exactly what it was built to receive. The first thing that happens when you commit to this daily is that your muscles begin to rebuild and hold on to the tissue that age is constantly trying to take away from you. Every time you lower your chest toward the floor and press back up, you're loading the muscles of your chest, the front of your shoulders, the backs of your upper arms, and the deep stabilizing muscles of your midsection all at the same time. That mechanical load creates a specific kind of stress inside the muscle fiber. Not damaging stress, but the exact kind of productive stress that the body reads as a signal to adapt. That signal travels down into the cell and activates a particular molecular pathway that researchers refer to as mTOR, which functions essentially as the master switch for muscle construction. Once activated, it tells the cell to begin synthesizing new protein, laying down fresh material to repair the fiber and rebuild it slightly stronger and slightly more capable than it was before. Do that day after day, and two things compound together. The muscle itself grows denser and more robust, and the nervous system becomes more skilled at recruiting and firing those fibers efficiently. That second adaptation is why strength tends to improve noticeably faster than visible muscle size does, especially in the early weeks. Now here is why this matters far beyond the ability to lift things. From roughly our mid-30s onward, the body begins losing muscle mass through a process called sarcopenia. It is gradual at first, barely noticeable for years, but it accelerates with each passing decade. And the people who arrive in their 70s and 80s with very little muscle left are the ones who struggle to rise from a low chair, who move through the world with fragility, who fall and take months to recover, or who never fully do. The muscle you build and maintain through consistent daily effort is quite literally the tissue that determines your physical independence later in life. It determines whether you can carry your own groceries, climb your own stairs, and live in your own home on your own terms. 30 push-ups a day is a daily investment in that future version of yourself. The second thing that happens is that your heart receives genuine, meaningful training. And this surprises most people because push-ups are not usually thought of as cardiovascular exercise. But consider what actually happens inside your body during a single push-up. Your upper body muscles contract forcefully to move your entire body weight. That contraction creates an immediate and significant demand for oxygenated blood. Your heart feels that demand and responds to it, beating faster, pumping with more force, pushing a higher volume of blood through the system to keep those muscles supplied. String 30 of those repetitions together, and you have given your heart a concentrated burst of real work. Over weeks and months, the heart adapts to that repeated demand by becoming more efficient. It learns to move more blood with each individual beat, which means it does not have to work as hard during ordinary daily activity. A significant long-term study tracking a large group of male firefighters produced findings that were striking enough to draw wide attention in the medical community. The researchers found that the men who could perform more than 40 consecutive push-ups had dramatically lower rates of serious cardiovascular events, heart attacks, strokes, and related conditions over the following 10 years, compared to the men who could manage fewer than 10. What made the finding particularly remarkable was that push-up capacity turned out to be a stronger predictor of future heart health and performance on a standard treadmill stress test. That tells you something important. The strength and endurance of the muscles involved in this movement reflect the health of the cardiovascular system in ways that go deeper than most people assume. The third change is one you cannot feel while it is happening, but it is among the most consequential things your body can do for its long-term structural integrity. Your bones grow stronger. Bone is not the inert, fixed material that most people picture. It is living tissue that is constantly being broken down in small amounts and then rebuilt. The body decides how much to invest in rebuilding it based entirely on the mechanical signals it receives. When your muscles contract during a push-up, they pull on the bones of your arms, your shoulders, your chest, and your upper spine. That pulling force is read by the cells responsible for building bone as a clear instruction to maintain density and structural strength. Remove that signal. Spend your days sedentary, asking nothing of your skeleton, and the rebuilding slows while the breakdown continues. Bone density begins to fall. This is how osteoporosis develops, not all at once, but through years of accumulated inactivity. A daily routine of loaded movement sends the opposite message. It tells the skeleton that it is needed, that it must hold its ground. And strong bones, as anyone who has watched a loved one shatter a hip in a minor fall already knows, are often the difference between a stumble that means nothing and an injury that changes everything. The fourth change reaches into your metabolism and affects how your body handles sugar throughout the entire day, not just during the 2 minutes you're doing push-ups, but for hours afterward. Muscle is the body's largest site for both storing and burning glucose, the sugar that circulates in your bloodstream. Under normal conditions, moving glucose out of the blood and into the cells requires the hormone insulin, which acts as a key that unlocks the cell surface receptors and allows glucose to enter. But here is something remarkable about muscle contraction specifically. When a muscle fiber contracts, it brings those same receptors to the cell surface entirely on its own, without needing insulin to trigger the process. Every push-up you perform is actively pulling sugar out of your bloodstream through a completely independent mechanism. And the more muscle you carry, and the more regularly you put it to work, the more efficiently your entire body manages blood sugar across the whole day. This matters enormously because chronically elevated blood sugar and the resistance to insulin that develops alongside it are the foundation of type 2 diabetes, a condition that slowly damages blood vessels, kidneys, eyesight, and nerve function over years and decades. Consistent muscle use is one of the most powerful tools available for keeping that process from taking hold. The fifth change involves the way you hold your body, your posture, your core stability, and the deep muscular support system that protect your spine. A push-up performed properly is not simply an arm exercise. To maintain a straight, controlled line from the crown of your head to the back of your heels throughout the movement, your deep abdominal muscles, the muscles along either side of your spine, and the muscles through your hips and glutes all have to engage fully and hold that engagement through every repetition. In effect, every push-up is also a dynamic plank. Train those stabilizing muscles consistently, and they grow stronger and more responsive. As they do, They begin to counteract the forward collapse that years of desk work and screen time gradually impose on the body. Shoulders draw back. The lower back finds its natural curve and holds it more easily. The whole posture begins to lift. This is not merely cosmetic. A strong, well-supported spine is far less vulnerable to the kind of sudden lower back injury that sidelines people for weeks. And the improved balance and stability that come with a stronger core become increasingly valuable as the years accumulate, directly reducing the risk of the falls that cause so much harm in later life. The sixth change happens in your brain. When your muscles contract during exercise, even brief, moderate exercise, they release chemical messengers into the bloodstream. The brain detects those signals and responds by releasing its own. Among these are endorphins, which shift mood upward, and a protein called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, often abbreviated as BDNF. This protein functions as something like a growth and maintenance compound for neural tissue. It helps existing brain cells stay healthy, encourages the formation of new connections between neurons, and appears to offer meaningful protection against the kind of gradual cognitive decline that tends to creep in as people age. People who maintain regular physical activity throughout their lives show measurably lower rates of both depression and dementia. They tend to preserve sharper memory and clearer thinking well into old age. And on a much more immediate timescale, a short burst of physical effort in the morning, even just 2 minutes of push-ups, tends to leave you noticeably more alert, more focused, and better equipped to manage stress throughout the hours that follow. The investment is almost laughably small for the return it delivers to the organ that matters most over the long term. The seventh and final change is perhaps the most quietly powerful of all, because it has less to do with any single measurement and more to do with who you are in the process of becoming. A habit that requires no equipment, no location, no cost, and no more than 2 minutes has stripped away nearly every excuse a person could find for skipping it. And that means it can actually be done every single day, without exception, regardless of weather or schedule or motivation. That daily consistency, that unbroken chain of small, repeated choices, is where all of the physiological changes described here actually live. None of them come from one extraordinary session. They come from the accumulation of modest, reliable effort over months and years, until the body has no choice but to adapt. And there's a useful technique that can amplify this even further, which is to split your 30 repetitions into 2 smaller sets taken at different points in the day. The reason this works comes back to that cellular building signal mentioned earlier. Activating the muscle stimulates that protein synthesis process, and a moderate set keeps that signal running for up to a day or 2 without pushing the muscle into the kind of heavy damage that requires long recovery. A second set later in the day tops that signal up, effectively extending the window during which the body is actively investing in building and maintaining muscle. Beyond the physiology, something else tends to happen once this daily practice becomes truly consistent. People who anchor themselves to one reliable daily habit find that it pulls other things along behind it. The person who shows up for their push-ups every morning without fail often finds, without having made any conscious decision about it, that they're also moving more through the day, sleeping more soundly at night, and making slightly better choices at meal times. The push-ups become the thread, and when you pull it steadily, the rest of a healthier life begins to follow. If a full push-up is not currently within reach, that is not an obstacle. It is simply a starting point. Dropping to the knees keeps the exact same pushing pattern and the same muscle engagement while reducing the load. Moving to a kitchen counter at roughly a 45-degree angle reduces it further. Standing at a wall and pressing away from it is where many people need to begin, and that is completely valid. The same muscles are working. The heart is still responding. The bones are still receiving their signal. The only variable is the amount of weight being moved. As strength builds over the following weeks and months, the angle lowers, the load increases, and the body adapts to meet each new level as it arrives. There is a version of this movement for every starting point, at every age, from every baseline of fitness. What adds up over 10 or 20 or 30 years of this small daily practice is something that no single gym session, no matter how intense, can replicate. It is the quiet, cumulative work of a body being asked every day to hold on to its strength, to keep its heart efficient, to maintain its bones, to manage its blood sugar, to support its posture, and to feed its brain. Begin wherever you are right now. Come back and do it again tomorrow. The version of yourself that is still strong and independent and sharp-minded 2 decades from now is not built in moments of occasional intensity. It is built in the minutes you choose, quietly and consistently, every single day.